go. It is 10:13 on this first day of February. Got a little bit of Elvis playing. Lynn Beck in front of me, RiverBender.com. What great stories, Lynn. Thank you so much for hanging out with me this morning.
It's my pleasure.
And I got to meet you last week, and just hearing some of the experience you had that you're writing about now, I just got to say right off the bat how excited I am for this.
That's good. I am too.
Good. Well, I'm on your website, and if you want to follow along at home, it's RiverBendor.com. And right off the bat, how many stories have you wrote so far? How many novel or books have you wrote?
I've written 6.
Wow. And now when I hear that number, my mind is still boggled, because that's not an easy thing to do, is to write, even one book. And writing 6, has the process been easier the more you've done it to get these books out?
It gets easier because you have a methodology, and you can edit and do everything more quickly.
Mm-hmm. And for all the people at home going, CJ, well, maybe you should ask him what books he's wrote so I can follow along better, because I always do that. I tease it first, and they go, well, ask the real questions, just to play a little game with the audience. And I got to ask you, what was the first novel that kind of kicked this all off?
First of all, I wrote Henry and Anthony, which is a fictional book about a SIUE goose and a homing pigeon.
Uh-huh.
And I wrote that because my son was a Marine, and he was located in Iraq. He was in the invasion of Iraq and the siege of Fallujah. Oh. And I was going crazy here, so I just started writing goose stories. And then I connected them all into one story.
That's incredible. And was that kind of your escape from dealing with...
Exactly.
That's incredible. And so that was the first...
That was the first book, yes.
And how long ago did you write that one?
That would have been 15 years ago.
Wow. So you've had a little bit of experience in the writing game since then, huh?
A bit.
And so for just to kind of preview this, and preview it, I think, in a better way... This is really cool. I'm on the your website now, on the Henry and Anthony paperback book section. Can we preview that a little bit more if people are interested about that one?
About which one?
Henry and Anthony, and just some of the stories that here.
Well, Henry is a goose who has a special talent, which is flying. He's very good at flying. He can fly upside down, sideways, you name it. And excuse me.
Oh, no worries.
He goes on an adventure, and he meets up with a homing pigeon who is lost. And Henry doesn't know where he's going, simply because he's being pulled by the goose god. The goose god is telling him, more or less, he gets this feeling that he needs to do something. And so he flies off in a given direction. And then he meets Anthony, which is a homing pigeon who can't find home. So we have a goose who doesn't know where he's going, and a homing pigeon who can't find home, and they're on adventures.
Wow.
And on their way, they meet up with other birds like Gilbert the duck and Leroy and Andy and Leroy, the geese, and so forth. And they go all over having adventures, rescuing people. It's more or less like Don Quixote and Sancho Panza with feathers. Right.
Well, I just think it's incredible that you can that your ability to really just detail a story and put something together out of just an abstract concept. That's really cool. And I got to ask you. So we're talking Henry and Anthony, but I want to ask you a little bit more about living 13 years in Latin America. Now, this is something we talked about last week, and you have a plethora of experiences that you went through. And just to kind of put us into that perspective, what led you to Latin America to begin?
I joined the Peace Corps when I was 20 years old, and they sent me to El Salvador, which is in Central America.
Wow. And so you were there for 13 years?
Well, I stayed in El Salvador for 2 years.
Okay.
And then I went back to the States to finish my degree. Then I went to Nicaragua for a year. And then I went back for a master's degree. And then I went to Brazil, and I ended up staying in Brazil for 10 years.
Wow. And, just hearing some of your experiences that I would love to share with the audience, what was the reason for writing about your time, your stories? Was it to inform everyone else, or was it to kind of keep a legacy or a lineage of just who you are?
I wanted to leave a legacy to my children and grandchildren. I would love to know more about my parents' lives
Right.
and my grandparents' lives, but I was too stupid to ask questions. And I feel that my children and grandchildren are not interested in this at this point. But when I pass, there'll be a day when they'll want to know, and then they have the books as a guide.
That is incredible. And, let me just right off the bat ask you about some of these experiences that you, went through, especially in Brazil. If it's okay, can I ask you about, again, on the air about the terrible situation you went through?
Which one?
With the good question. We should switch roles. The one with the cruxes and they were burying coins in your yard and torment and putting a curse on you.
Well, I had a business when I sold computers and did software and had computer classes, and all of a sudden, the business, the core business was the computer classes, the programming. And so one day we just noticed that classes were finishing and no new classes were starting. So we were very quickly going to run into a cash flow problem.
Right.
And one night my night watchman told me that he thought that was a result of voodoo. And he recommended that he take me to his voodoo priestess to counteract it. And we were very nervous, my wife and I, because we didn't have anybody to rely on.
Right.
You get in financial trouble, and nobody knew me there. I was a foreigner, and so we didn't have any cushion. So we agreed, and we got in our little car, and we drove for 3 hours into the country. And in a very small village, we stopped and found a little house, and they had kind of a concrete floor there was a little arena.
Right.
And on the concrete, they had all kinds of paintings and drawings and such things as I don't know what they are. But there were about 12 or 13 women who danced in a circle with their Baiana dresses, which are kind of like square dance dresses.
Okay.
And this big turban on their head. But they went in a circle and they twirled. And all of a sudden, one of them would fall to the floor, just collapse, and start wiggling, just
like spasming, or
like a spasm.
Yeah, okay.
And one or two of the other ladies would stop and help them from hurting themselves. And that lady had just received a spirit, and these spirits were not nice. They were on the dark side. Mm-hmm. And so they would try and talk to the spirit and get the spirit to leave, because it was not the spirit that they wanted. They wanted to communicate with a very specific spirit.
Okay.
And so sometimes before she could recover and get up, somebody else or even two people would be on the floor flapping. And it was really, it was amazing. And my wife and I sat there with our mouths open. But finally, they reached the spirit that they wanted and made the request, got their information, and the whole thing ended. I should say that there were chickens that were sacrificed as well. But
right.
That just dumbfounded me.
And I got to ask you, I mean, it seems like you already, at this point in time, had some life experience and experienced different cultures. Well, that had to have been still a huge shock. You're walking in.
That was a shock to both my wife and myself. But the end of it was that they said that there were somebody throwing up what they called works or spells on top of my roof, and that they were impeding people from going into my business. That, and she said that in the back of my house, on the right-hand side, that I would find 5 coins buried vertically in concrete, and that I had to remove those in a very specific way. And so we drove home, and I might add that this lady had never been to this city.
Oh, so this is a complete stranger.
A complete stranger. I mean, they'd never seen the city, much less my house.
Right.
So we go back to our business, and we go to the back right-hand corner. That was the kitchen, and we found two colors of concrete under the sink. And so we broke the small one out, and buried there were 5 coins vertically.
That would have done me in. That seriously would have done me in if I saw those coins. I'd have been in Kansas.
But we pulled the coins out with a pair of pliers, so we didn't touch them.
Right.
Got them in a glass, and then the night watchman disposed of them properly. And then every morning, very early, before sun came up, I got up on the roof and swept the roof of any spells that were thrown up there. And it took a week or more before they stopped throwing them up there. But within 2 days after completing that, our business picked up. It was like you turned a faucet on.
Now, I got to ask you, was this type of spirituality, was that something you ever considered or, believed in, maybe not believed in? Or
I do not believe in it.
So that had to have been another shock in itself going.
It was very much so.
Man, that really is incredible. And so right after that, it wasn't even like it gradually, it was just a flip of the switch and you're off and running again.
Correct.
And now, were there other situations? Because to me, it's just so fascinating to see the cultural differences really of how, we do things in here in, America and how other countries do them. And is voodoo something that's very prevalent down in?
Oh, very much. There's another one that's, it's called Macumba. There.
Okay.
But there's another one that's called White Table. And White Table is, in essence, good voodoo. In other words, it's spiritism, but you cannot hurt anybody. And you cannot pay them. They do this free of charge because they consider it a gift from God, and they share it.
Right.
And they do only good. And then, but the voodoo, you have to pay them, and sometimes they come back and almost try to blackmail you to get more money, or they'll do something else.
And they'll scare you.
Yeah. So it's really interesting.
And I got to ask you, before we take a break and pay a couple of bills and come right back, I got to ask you, why join the Peace Corps? Was there something in your heart, that said it's time for me to do something like this, or was it just? I
wanted to go to Latin America, and I wanted to learn to speak Spanish fluently. Wow,
that's incredible. And so that was it, huh? You just thought, what better time to do this, or what better moment?
I was very bored at the university.
Okay.
So after 2 years at the university, then I opted out and joined the Peace Corps. And then when I went back, it was very difficult to finish the last 2 years because I was once again bored.
You got to keep moving. And we have more great stories to talk about with Lynn Beck, Lynn Beck, author. And you can find out more information online on a great website, I might add, because I love being able to really get to know who you are and see so many testimonials and just different sediments or different paragraphs and just passages on the books you wrote. And you can find out more information HLynnBeckBooks.com. Can you stick around for a minute?
Certainly.
We're going to take a break. I just got to pay a quick bill or two. We'll come back and keep our conversation going right after this in downtown Alton.
RiverBender Radio has built 3 great new stations just for you in the Riverbend. The Eagle, the Riverbend's classic rock station. The Bridge, hit music for the Riverbend. And The River, today's country, and all your favorites. Check them out today at RiverBender.com.
I just got a new air conditioner. Top of the line.
I bet mine's better. It's so efficient and quiet, I hardly know it's running.
I've got you both trumped. I've got a Linux.
So do I.
Barrett Heating and Cooling carries Linux products to meet any budget. Don't gamble with your energy dollars. Call Barrett Heating and Cooling and start saving today.
Lennox. Innovation never felt so good.
Macias Insurance Agency, providing quality products with extremely competitive prices. As an independent provider, we source multiple companies to offer the best rates possible. Covering auto, home, business, and life insurance, our goal is to provide quality service that meets and exceeds customer expectations. You can rest easy knowing the Macias team is working round the clock to ensure that both you and the most important parts of your life are covered. Our qualified professionals make the insurance process easy so you can live carefree and focus on what matters most. Visit MaciasInsuranceAgency.com today to find out what our team can do for you. you.
Are you in the market for new flooring? Look no further than Ed Eagles Discount Carpet. Ed Eagles has an enormous inventory of carpet, tile, vinyl, and hardwood with professionally trained carpet installers that will treat your project and home with the utmost respect. Lowe's and Home Depot can't even compare. Our discounted prices regularly beat out the big box stores. Stop by today to have your new flooring ready for the holiday season. Ed Eagles, quality carpet, tile, vinyl, and hardwood at discount prices, located on Humbert Road in Alton.
Inspiring her dreams and helping her pursue them. That's why we protect your house and your car, because we know they're the launching pad to their dreams. And now you can save up to 23% when you bundle your home and auto. American Family Insurance.
Don't mind me. Sorry, we're just having a good conversation off the air, you know? Lynn Beck back with me at 10:29 on this first day of February. LynnBeckBooks.com to follow along at home. Man, this is just such a fascinating story. And I got to ask you, we were talking last week about a couple of the stories and a couple of the experiences that you went through. And I got to ask you right off the bat about this, you know, recircle back to it and fill our audience in about this story where you were being chased, you know, by motorcycles, right? I mean, and there was grading in the road and you're having to keep flying and flooring it in a van. Take us through that story.
I was being chased by a car.
Oh, a car, sorry.
But there was another time when I was chased by a motorcycle, but that was a different.
There are tons of stories. Well, that's what I think so really fascinating about your books is there's not just one story you rely on. There are a plethora of experiences you went through, and it's kind of a great for us to live kind of vicariously through somebody else. You have a great way to deliver that too. So I'll ask you about the motorcycle one first.
Oh, that was just that was a simple one where I was driving home at noon for lunch. And the street that we had was very wide. It was like 6 lanes, but it was dirt and full of potholes. And it had just rained, so the potholes were full of water. And I was driving along and in a Volkswagen van, and my front tire hit a pothole and just absolutely sprayed a motorcycle. Oh. I mean, it just absolutely drenched him. And he got very upset.
I'm not laughing. I shouldn't laugh.
And he started chasing me. And I mean, I couldn't outrun him. So I just kept, I didn't want to, I was right near my house, but I didn't want to go home because I didn't want him to know where I lived.
Right.
So I just kept driving and I tried to avoid lights. And I just basically just wore him down until he went, you know, he gave up and went home.
That's a great story. Oh my goodness. Well, the one thing that I am fascinated about too is I was going to save this for last, but I think I want to get into this because this is a little bit different. Folks at home, have you ever hitchhiked through a jungle? Because Lynn Beck has. Take us through this.
Well, I was on vacation and I went around to the southern side of El Salvador, then sneaked up through Honduras into Tegucigalpa, and then all the way up to the northeastern corner of Honduras, where I was trying to hitchhike from Honduras into Belize. And I caught a ride on about a small boat. It was about maybe 20 feet long, 25, 8 or 10 feet wide. And it was hauling, it was an old wooden vessel. and it was hauling beer and concrete, sacks of concrete. And so for $10, they took me, and I got 2 nights sleep. I got 2 days ride and meals for $10.
Wow.
But when we went out on the ocean, and when it came mealtime, they would stop the boat, and one of them would dive and catch fish and throw them up on the boat. And when they got a fish for every person, then they came back and started the trip again, and the other one, prepared the food. But that's what every mealtime, that's what they did. They didn't take any food with them. They just fished it as we went.
What I think's incredible just about that brief little tidbit is the fact that it's almost like they had packages for package deal rates. You get 2 nights or 3 days.
Yeah.
That's pretty remarkable.
But then I took a bus up through Belize to the Guatemalan border, spent the night, and then I hitchhiked into Petén, the Petén jungle, to see the Tikal ruins, the Indian ruins. And I got there and saw the ruins. I was the only tourist there. And I climbed all of the pyramids and took photographs and did everything. But there were no facilities there. There was no restroom. There was no motel, no restaurant, nothing. It was just the pyramids in the jungle and a small village. Mm-hmm. And I asked somebody when the next bus left, and they said on Wednesday, and this was like Sunday or Monday. And there was no place to stay, so I had to get out of there some way. I asked around and found a truck that was hauling wood out at 2 p.m. So I found the driver, got myself a passage on that, and he put me up on top of the wood. And so we started off through the jungle on a small road, and there would be people coming out of the jungle all the time. They would negotiate with him, and then they'd climb on top. And before long, we had 10 people up there. So this truck was acting like a bus because they just didn't have any alternative. And then this one little kid came out of the jungle pulling a big sack, and it turned out they were pineapple, and they were gigantic pineapples, and just golden. And I asked how much they were, and he said $0.10. And see, I hadn't eaten in a very long time, so I bought the whole sack.
How long did they last?
About 20 minutes.
Really?
Well, because I had the men on top, one of them that would prepare them and hand out the slices and prepare another. So they were for probably 10 people. So it didn't take long to everybody eat the pineapple, but that was the best pineapple I ever tasted.
I bet it was. And now, how long did it take you to get out of the jungle?
Well, we ended up we came to a small village in the jungle, and he stopped. And I asked when he was leaving again, and he said he wasn't. That was the end of the road. And so what I'd done is gotten myself deeper into the jungle. And I asked around, and I found out that there was a barge leaving later that afternoon from the port, which was just,
right.
A bank of the river. And so I went down and secured that passage, and I would be sleeping and standing on sacks of corn on the barge. And there was no place to eat in the village, nothing to drink, no bottled water, no nothing. And I was, very thirsty, very hungry. But I got on the barge and we took off, and there were about 20 other people on the barge. And these were merchants that went up and down.
Oh, okay.
Just people that did this normally. And then it got dark, and at 3 a.m., we stopped at a barge stop along the river, which was just a grass hut and a bunch of poles that you could hang a hammock on. And the ladies there, they went out and grabbed 2 chickens, butchered them, put them in, made soup, and anybody that paid a certain amount would get a bowl of soup.
Wow.
And so then we the next morning at 6 a.m. we left, and we ended up in the Atlantic Ocean for 3 hours before we got to land, and that was the end of that trip.
That is just, I mean, my mind is just spinning. And to me, it's like, you know, this is something you'd see in a movie, you know, I mean, something that we'd watch in a movie about, you know, some, you know, an individual is going on the adventure of, you know, really a lifetime. And
Right.
did you ever expect yourself to find yourself in so many of these really just...
Well, I never planned my trips.
Yep.
I mean, I just, you know, I needed to ask more questions. Like when I got on a truck, I should have asked where it was going.
That's a good point.
I assumed we were just going to go back out the jungle, but that was a bad assumption.
And the thing is, it's relatable, but not relatable, right? Because I've never been in the jungle and, you know, in Latin America, but, you know, you don't ask the obvious question because, well, we're leaving, you know, I'm going home.
I was just happy to be out of there.
Right. No, I got to ask you, coming back into the States, because, you know, there's so many more stories, and we'll have to have you back on to really dive deeper into this as time goes by. But you're coming back in the States and getting reacclimated. I mean, was that a little bit of a transition period for you?
That was very difficult.
Was it really? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, for example, when I was in El Salvador, I worked with Indian farmers,
Right.
very poor Indian farmers, and most of them had suffered hunger. And I had some of my Indian friends that had children that died of malnutrition. And so seeing food wasted really bothers me.
Right.
And I work part-time at a restaurant, and I'm a dishwasher.
Mm-hmm.
And so I go out and collect dishes to wash, and so many people leave, I mean, ribs and good food on their plate, and it's just amazing. And then in the kitchen, I see sometimes something happens and they made too much and they throw it away.
Right.
And that just, that makes me so sad.
Well, I couldn't even imagine that, because you're right. I could, especially going through those things and seeing your friends, you know, children suffering, and you're coming back and seeing, I guess the way just throw it away. You know, we don't need it now. Well, we can just buy it again tomorrow. That's got to be tough.
That hurts a lot.
Absolutely. And was there, in terms of what I kind of picking up out of just talking with you the last, 30 minutes we've been talking now, is that even though it was, a culture shock, it would be for me to go to Latin America and experience what you did, it seems like there was a unity feel where it seems like the good people around you were tight knit and, were willing to help.
Well, I had really good friends.
Yeah.
And I learned to speak Spanish and Portuguese fluently. And so when I came back both times from Central America and from Brazil, I thought in those languages.
Really?
I dreamed in those languages. And sometimes I would be talking with somebody and all of a sudden I would start speaking Portuguese or Spanish to them, and they would look at me like I was crazy. And I didn't even know I was speaking in Spanish or Portuguese.
Because it's just your first instinct, right? That is incredible. And I got to ask you, because you have a lot of pieces out, right? And there's so many guys, I'm really telling you, if you haven't gone yet, check it out, LynnBeckBooks.com. There's so many different, writings, and living 13 years in Latin America is the culmination of the different countries, of the different books you wrote about, right?
Yes. What I did is I extracted the very best stories from living in El Salvador, living in Nicaragua, and living in Brazil, and put them in one book.
And now I got to ask you, before I let you go, is the book you wrote, Growing Up on a Nebraska Farm, is that just about the upbringing of yourself?
Yes, that was just my life in Nebraska, and it contains a little bit about the history of irrigation in my county.
Really? Interesting.
Because it's the irrigation center, more or less. Mm-hmm. And my father did land leveling for gravity irrigation. And so that I have a fairly complete history of that.
That's actually very interesting as well. And I got to ask you, Lynn, what's the next step for all of this? I mean, you have some amazing stories. And you know what? I do want to say kudos to you for having, quite frankly, the guts to put your stories out there for all of us to enjoy, because that's a little bit difficult too, because you're putting your life out there for us to kind of experience, vicariously through reading.
Well, right now I'm editing Living in Brazil in Spanish.
Wow. How long is that going to take?
That'll take a few days.
I bet. And, in terms of works coming up, are there any books, anything?
No, I'm done writing. I've said it all.
Yep. That's good, though. I mean, you've definitely said it all. And I'm telling you, I am so... we've got to have you back on to talk a little bit more about just, the individual books itself, because I wanted to have you on to talk about just the living 13 years in Latin America and just kind of getting a little bit of some insight on some of your stories. But I got to ask you, out of El Salvador, Nicaragua, Brazil, what was your favorite place to live in Latin America?
Well, Brazil was a kick. Yeah, because I lived on the beach.
Oh, no way!
I did.
Oh, that's got to be beautiful.
I lived maybe 50 feet from the water.
Okay, now...
So that was a real hardship.
That's incredible. And Lynn, all I ask is that maybe in a couple of months we get you back on and talk about one of the books, just is singling one of the books out, and we'll ask you a little bit more about, El Salvador and Nicaragua next time.
Okay, very good.
Absolutely. 1044, how awesome has this been? I've been looking forward to this all week because the stories you have are just, countless and so engaging. And you guys can find out more about these stories on lynnbeckbooks.com. That's lynnbeckbooks.com. Thank you for your time.
No, my pleasure.
10:45. Wow, time's flying on this first day of February. Take a quick break. We'll come back, wrap up this Wednesday in downtown Alton.